On this Friday night, Ottawa's multi-billion-dollar bet on electric. Volkswagen lands one of the biggest federal subsidies in Canadian history.
This is an enormous amount of money.
What it means for the sector and the Ontario town bracing for generational change.
The scale of this is so big.
Immigration implications. Hundreds of thousands desperate to call Canada home, left in limbo as a historic federal strike drags on.
Each day will cost a lot to our country.
A golden heist. Questions swirl at Canada's largest airport over millions in missing gold. Was it an inside job? And saving irreplaceable giants.
Our future generations depend on those things.
The new form of engagement taking root in the fight for Canada's ancient forests.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The world's biggest car company, Volkswagen, says it will build its first manufacturing facility in Canada near the city of St. Thomas in southwestern Ontario. The automaker says it will spend $7 billion to build a huge battery plant for electric vehicles. It will employ 3,000 people and create 30,000 spin-off jobs. Now, the federal government is also promising Volkswagen billions in subsidies. But for all the promised benefits, there's no getting around taxpayers putting up a significant chunk of money. In our top story tonight, our chief political correspondent David Akin examines the question, is it worth it?
Volkswagen, welcome to Ontario.
Ontario's premier was all smiles, and why not? A huge investment that will create thousands of new jobs, not just in the southwestern Ontario town of St. Thomas, but in other communities up and down Ontario's Highway 401 corridor. And it's an investment backstop by one of the biggest federal subsidies ever given to a private company, potentially more than $13 billion. The Prime Minister said that is money well spent.
But let's be really clear about what's happening here today. Other parts of the world, including our neighbors to the south, were willing to put up an awful lot of money to get this project there.
What Trudeau is talking about is Joe Biden's landmark industrial policy, the Inflation Reduction Act. It's legislation which promises $500 billion in subsidies to companies who build green technology plants in the U.S. Canada's government and many in Europe have been worried Biden's generous subsidies means they'll lose out on these so-called factories of the future.
So yes, we put up a lot of money that's going to come back in investments in economic activity very quickly.
We've got to be smart and we've got to compete, and we can land a few of these and we should go for it. And I don't know if there's a bigger win than the biggest car company in the world deciding to do their most expensive advanced products and putting them in the hands of Canadian workers.
Some wonder, though, if this battery factory, as big as it is, comes at too high a cost for the federal treasury. The R&D for these batteries will likely take place somewhere else, Germany most likely, and the assembly of the electric vehicles using these batteries will also occur somewhere else, likely in the U.S.
This is an enormous amount of money for a very narrow part of the auto industry. It's an important part, but it's a very narrow part.
But the Prime Minister argues this facility will be a national anchor that will put Canada at the heart of the 21st century supply chain for new kinds of cars and trucks. And he says Canada would miss that opportunity without the financial contribution of its taxpayers. Farah.
Thanks, David. That's David Akin reporting from Ottawa. Now, the province of Ontario has been pushing to be a hub for electric vehicle manufacturing for some time. And as David mentioned, this is a big boost for a small city. As Mike Drolet reports from St. Thomas, there's hope of benefits for generations to come.
St. Thomas may be a small city, but big news? It's used to that. This is, after all, where the legendary Jumbo the Elephant tragically died in 1885. Today, it's a city that's showing a desperate need for economic revitalization, that believes it's now set itself up for generational success.
I've really found it's tough to go to sleep at night when you're smiling.
What VW is bringing to the area is huge, literally and figuratively. The Gigafactory will be roughly 1 kilometer long by 1.5 kilometers wide, or 600 city blocks.
So is it a success if 15 years from now you look at St. Thomas and you still recognize St. Thomas?
Yeah, I think so. Look, young people who used to have to go away to university and never come back are now staying because we've created a community where you can grow up with your children, where you can have a job that you can buy a house working at.
It all seems so perfect. 3,000 direct jobs and another 30,000 will be needed across the province to help support the factory. But St. Thomas is a city of 45,000, and there aren't enough qualified people in the province to fill the need for skilled trades now.
We had 440,000 immigrants come to Ontario just last year alone. We're going to have a continual flow.
But yet you have to train them, though.
We have part of our plan with Volkswagen is training through Fanshawe College.
If all that works out, there's still the question of infrastructure. Millions will be spent upgrading the highways and services, and the city's economic development leads are already planning new subdivisions. They've given assurances to VW that they can get it done.
The scale of this is so big that certainly the gateway of the community when you're coming in from London, it's not going to look the same. You know, I'm a little concerned people are going to say, oh, St. Thomas is that town next to the battery plant. You know, we're using that instead of the other way around. But that's maybe not such a bad thing to be known for. And sustainability is something we all care about here in St. Thomas, and this is a great step towards that for our country.
If everything falls into place, this will be a transformative deal for the city, not only for decades, but they hope lifetimes. Mike Drolet, Global News, St. Thomas, Ontario.
And on the immigration file, a strike by federal public workers is plunging hundreds of thousands of immigration applications into uncertainty. New applications are no longer being processed. Touria Izri spoke to some of the newcomers who are now stuck in limbo.
Larry Nanda is getting ready to start her career and make Canada her permanent home. The international student from India just graduated from Carleton University in Ottawa. But in order to land a full-time job, Nanda needs a work permit.
If I don't get that in time, combined with the strike, there is a risk for me having to go back to India.
Tens of thousands of federal public workers have walked off the job. That includes the civil servants who handle immigration files.
Clients should expect to experience serious delays with processing applications across all of our immigration streams.
Yasmin Izazi is already experiencing delays.
So raise your right hand and so join in.
She passed her citizenship test, but is now stalled at the very last step.
It's something that you take pride in, you know, becoming a Canadian citizen and just going to that ceremony.
Now her ceremony will likely be pushed back.
Especially as an Iranian, it's more difficult for me to travel with my current passport.
At any given time, around 1 million applications are making their way through Canada's immigration system. And right now, many of them are on pause because of the strike. Immigration lawyers warn this will have a profoundly negative impact on students, families, and the economy. The Canadian government is relying heavily on immigration to deal with a severe labor shortage.
Each day will cost a lot to our country, to our economy, to our universities, to our tourism. Every industry sector is going to be affected by this.
I want to study.
Nanda is hoping for a quick resolution.
I want to see employees be satisfied with what they're asking for, but I also want to see international students being cared for a little more consideration being given to us who are trying to, strive for a better lifestyle here in Canada.
The dream of a better life that's just become more complicated. Touria Izri, Global News, Ottawa.
A Paris court has convicted a Lebanese-Canadian academic in absentia on terrorism charges. Hassan Diab was sentenced to life in prison over a bombing outside a Paris synagogue in 1980 that killed 4 and wounded 46. The court issued an arrest warrant for the now 69-year-old who lives in Ottawa and denies any wrongdoing. Diab spent 3 years behind bars in France before judges dismissed the allegations against him in 2018. But in 2021, France's top court rejected an appeal and ordered him to stand trial. Supporters are now calling on Canada to refuse any new extradition request from France. Former Liberal MP Han Dong, who now sits as an independent, has filed a defamation suit against Global News and our parent company, Chorus Entertainment. In a statement of claim that was filed on Thursday, Dong says he was portrayed as a traitor and knowing participant in Chinese interference in Canada. The suit is related to Global News reporting that two independent national security sources said Dong had a conversation in 2021 with the Chinese consul general in which Dong raised the cases of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor and allegedly advised China to delay their release. Dong denies the allegations and calls the stories malicious, irresponsible, and defamatory. He's seeking a retraction of the stories and broadcasts. Allegations in the statement of claim have not been tested in court. Near Toronto, investigators are trying to wrap their head around an audacious heist straight out of Netflix. Police say a container storing $20 million worth of valuable items, including gold, was somehow stolen off a plane at Pearson International Airport. Now, where the loot is, who the culprits are, and even how they pulled this off is still a mystery. And the crime is raising big questions about the state of security at Canada's largest airport. Our Sean O'Shea has more tonight. Sean.
Far, you see gold heists in movies all the time, but this one was real, and it was worth $20 million. Canada's biggest airport beyond the passenger terminals, where the movement of people and cargo is key. But this week, thieves were able to get their hands on one shipping container that stood out. Inside, gold and other valuables.
The total worth estimated at this time in our investigation for the property is estimated at just over $20 million.
A police source tells Global News Air Canada Cargo was handling the gold and other valuables. In a statement, Air Canada says it has no information to provide on the situation. The $20 million in gold and valuables hasn't been seen since.
Somebody messed up here for the security on this.
Veteran former Toronto police officer Craig Bromell says the case raises broader concerns about safety at the airport.
My first thought was, if it was this easy to get out with a product, how easy is it to get in with a product? And you can let your imagination go on that one.
Some who heard about the theft agree.
It's supposed to be secure for families and people are supposed to feel safe, and I guess that wouldn't make anybody feel safe, right?
Doesn't make you feel safe?
No, not at all, no.
I'm very surprised. It's like unsafe for all of us.
In this case...
Well, first thing I think is inside job, obviously. Like, how do you know that's there?
Experts say that's a safe assumption.
Somebody obviously knew that it was going to be coming and somebody knew that it was there.
Security broke down.
Often what companies have is somewhat dependent on what kind of cargo they ship. And often that's driven by the requirements of their insurance company.
Police won't say who owned the property or what else was inside the container, along with the gold. No one was hurt in the heist, and police say public safety was not at risk. Experts say, though, if it was this easy to steal $20 million, what else is possible? Farah?
Sean O'Shea, thank you. Breaking news from the U.S., the Supreme Court is protecting access to a widely used abortion drug. Mifepristone will remain available for now, halting a decision by the lower court that would have restricted access to the commonly used pill. The lower court was attempting to roll back FDA approval of the drug. It has been approved for 2 decades. This is a victory for the Biden administration as it fights to protect women's reproductive rights in post-Roe v. Wade America. Friendly fire caught on tape. Coming up, panic after a Russian warplane dropped a bomb on one of its own cities. Russia is admitting one of its warplanes accidentally dropped a bomb on a city close to the border with Ukraine, causing a huge explosion. 3 people were injured in the blast that left a crater 20 meters deep. The explosion was so strong it sent a car flying onto a store roof. Several buildings were also damaged. Canada is sending another $39 million to Ukraine in military aid. Defense Minister Anita Anand made the announcement today from Germany during a meeting with NATO allies. The donation includes almost $35 million to help Ukraine buy fuel, first aid kits, and other non-lethal provisions through a special fund set up by NATO. The rest of the money is for sniper rifles, ammunition, and new radio sets for the 8 Leopard 2 tanks Canada donated to Ukraine. A photograph taken last March in Ukraine has won the World Press Photo of the Year award. The harrowing image shows a pregnant woman being carried through the shattered remains of a maternity hospital in Mariupol. The 32-year-old died just after giving birth to the lifeless body of her baby. It's being called one of the most defining images of Russia's war in Ukraine. We'll be right back. Random acts of violence are on the rise across Canada, on public transit, on city streets, and they're even happening in places meant for peace and quiet. As Melissa Ridgen reports, cases of verbal and physical violence are in our public libraries, and they're increasing as well.
He was a gem. He was that guy that never left anybody out.
Tanya Kaye's son Tyree was a regular visitor at Winnipeg's Millennium Library. In December, he was at the library when the 28-year-old was stabbed.
They showed up at my door at 5 in the morning to tell me that my son had been murdered.
4 teenagers have been charged in his death. Incidents of violence are happening in libraries right across the country.
I did have one year where every 3 months I was assaulted.
Cameron Ray and Ayla McLeish worked as supervisor librarians at the Toronto Reference Library.
This guy chased me around the branch with a pair of hair scissors.
I've come across overdose victims, people who are unconscious.
The library reflects the larger world around it.
Siobhan Stevenson has studied the changing role of public libraries.
People are coming to the library and they have really significant needs. There's all kinds of social crises, homelessness, opioid epidemic, random acts of violence in places like just a social safety net that's been so diminished.
With cuts to social services, many people with complex problems have nowhere to turn.
Most of the time it is someone who has been chewed up and spit out by society, and they're at the end of their rope.
Libraries are one of the few spaces with doors open to everyone.
Our whole reason for existing is to be open to everyone without judgment. But at the same time of being welcoming, we also need to be a safe environment for our staff and for our customers.
The Edmonton Public Library recognized its vulnerable clients needed more services.
Hey.
It became one of the first in Canada to bring in social workers.
A library is a great place for a social worker because it's barrier-free and accessible.
After Tyree's death, the Millennium Library installed a metal detector and added a regular police presence. Tyree's mother doesn't blame the library. She says the problem is much bigger.
Winnipeg is struggling with youth crime. It's struggling with drugs. There's 1,000,001 issues. This is just one of them.
Libraries point out it's only a tiny fraction of the visits that ever turn violent. Nationally, they're working together to find solutions to keep libraries safe, and that means continuously evolving to meet the needs of the community. Farah?
Melissa Ridgen in Winnipeg. Thanks, Melissa. And Melissa will have more on how libraries are meeting these challenges as the public spaces transform. Watch The New Reality Saturday at 7 right here on Global. Tossed out from Jurassic Park. Next, the coach who helped Toronto get its first NBA championship gets the boot. The Raptors haven't won any hardware since then, and after another bad season, finishing 9th, the Raptors fired head coach Nick Nurse today. Vice Chairman and President Masai Ujiri says changing the culture and reigniting the Raptors spirit is at the heart of this decision.
The feel, the spirit of who we really are. It's been very disappointing for us, and we want to gain our momentum back.
Ujiri says there is nothing contentious about the firing, that it's simply about winning in the future, and he thanked Nick Nurse for his service. It's easy to forget the benefits of trees in our environment and to our health, and their deep histories that can span far longer than our lifetimes. Neetu Garcha reports on a registry created by researchers in British Columbia that's ensuring the towering giants get the attention and the protection that they deserve.
Forests in BC are a treasure trove of biodiversity and natural beauty. But there's so much more to these lush lands than meets the eye.
Think about just how interconnected we are as humans with forests.
Ira Sutherland is a researcher focused on the benefits of forests.
I'm breathing in the oxygen provided by this tree, and I'm exhaling carbon dioxide that's taken in by this tree to produce energy and sugar. The structure of the forest.
Sutherland says one way to understand the importance of forests is through the Big Tree Registry, a community-driven initiative to record some of the province's biggest trees.
So why do you actually map the location of these big trees?
Well, that spatial information is really important for informing how we can plan to conserve those trees.
Anyone can nominate any tree and share a story about why it's special. In this case, Sutherland is meeting one of those tree enthusiasts.
Hey, good to finally meet you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah. For fun, for something to do, really, honestly, and and it's turned into a lot more. It's more about conservation for me now.
All right, get that there.
which is why Michael Warner is eager to equip himself with new knowledge about identifying and measuring trees.
We're co-evolving together. Changes in society are co-evolving with changes in forests.
It's something those like elder and canoe carver Joe Martin, who worked with Sutherland on this film promoting sustainable forest management, has long known.
Our future generations depend on those things.
Martin told us Indigenous oral teachings passed down for generations about always leaving the land in a better condition than it's found is something he hopes more people will reflect on.
People should follow and see Indigenous people's teachings across the world, wherever they come from.
It's just like a natural part of it.
Sutherland hopes his research initiatives will help more people recognize they're more than awe-inspiring natural wonders to be admired, but living organisms essential to the health of our planet. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
And that's Global National for this Friday. I'm Farah Nasser. Thanks for being with us. And for those of you celebrating, Eid Mubarak. We leave you with Eid celebrations across Canada on one of the biggest events in the Islamic calendar. From coast to coast to coast, people gathered for prayers and to celebrate Eid, the end of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.